Thank you for joining us for the Q&A. My name is Robin Citizen. I'm the Director of Programming for TIFF, and I'll be moderating this Q&A. Just a couple of housekeeping comments. I'm going to get the discussion started, and then I'll turn it over to you. I'm sure you have questions. Please make sure to raise your hand high, and then I will repeat your question just to make sure everyone in the audience hears it and everyone on stage can hear it too. With that, please help me welcome back to the stage filmmaker Mahalia Belo. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's start at the beginning. I really am interested in hearing you discuss kind of the process of where this idea came from and how you developed it into a film.
Well, originally it was a book who I didn't say thank you to, and I felt I was then kicking myself upstairs, by Megan Hunter, who wrote this amazing novel, that was poetic and described a flood through the eyes of being a mum. And it was so beautifully told, it resonated with me for quite a long time. I read it when I think just before it first got published. And I spoke with Liza Marshall, one of the producers, about it a long time ago. But in truth, I was nervous about how it would be adapted. I thought, oh, if this is going to be made into a movie, they're going to want to bring all of the, the threat and the danger of the flood to the fore, and you'd lose the intimacy. And I just got very nervous of that. But later, after a bit of time, there was a script by Alice Birch, which was phenomenal and completely not what I expected. She has such an interesting approach to form, and I was so excited to work with her again on the material.
It really is such a beautiful character study, and it's anchored by many wonderful performances. Of course, Jodie Comer, Catherine Waterston. Can you talk a little bit about the cast, and did you have people in mind when you were developing the film?
I think fairly early on, Jodie was interested, and we met through the development process. And when I met her, she kind of immediately was on the same page. Like, we wanted it to be like that switch between dark and funny and light and sad, and managed to try and kind of wrap up the truth of surviving. You don't go through things kind of blindly and coldly. It's a kind of mixture. And she had like brilliant ideas about woman. So I was just, when she was game and up for it, I was really happy. And from then on, we kind of were moving through, trying to find the right people. Joel Fry, who plays her partner, I had worked with before on Requiem, but I wasn't certain that he would be right. But I knew from there that he had he often plays, I don't know if you know him from other work, but he often plays quite comedic characters. But because I had worked with him, I knew he had this capacity as an actor to really get under the skin of, tragedy. And so we actually did a little chemistry with Jodie, and I just wanted to see if it would work. And, at the end, it was just like shivers, and she looked at me. He left the room, so it was really funny. In that moment, he just did it, and then just went, okay, bye, and just left, because I think he was really nervous. And then Jodie just looked at me. I was like, oh no, he's just walked off, how awkward. But she looked at me and was like, I was like, oh, thank you, that's great.
He knew that when he did a good job, that's when you leave the room.
Yeah, exactly. It's just his way. He's a bit like that sometimes. Yeah.
You spoke a bit earlier about in your adaptation, not really wanting to emphasize some of the kind of environmental aspects of it. So when you were kind of developing the script, how did you develop the women friendships that become so kind of pivotal to the last part of the film, and then all of the kind of in contrast, the depictions that we see of masculinity in the film, which often seem quite kind of isolated and to themselves, whereas the women really form this communal existence.
I mean, I think I was interested in how people cope, and I wasn't actually trying to make a divide. With R's character, I wanted to honor the grief he had been through, and that's true to the book as well. So it was more that sometimes people don't have the capacity to be heroes at that particular moment in time, that they have to kind of, move away and just take care of themselves, and how that the fallout of that was very real. But there is love there. There is deep love despite that, and that's true also of women's relationship with. In the book, nobody has names, and this is the same for the film. So it gets a bit odd when I talk about it here, because Catherine Waterston's character is just an initial, which is O. Which actually was quite useful for the actors, because I think they could have the secret of the name for themselves, and we retained it for that reason. But yeah, the relationship between Catherine Waterston's and women's character is also a love. It's like when you get faced with stuff hitting you, and you find that person who will kind of guide you through for a period of time. There's a kind of deep connection there. And I've had these amazing friendships in my life, and actually through making this film as well, just that there's moments in time when people come and are there. And I just wanted to honor that as well, I think.
The scene where Catherine and Jodie's characters separate is almost as painful as when Jodie is left. It's definitely a poignant, painful moment to watch as an audience member. I want to turn it over to you for questions. I'm sure you have some. Yes. If you were in the balcony, just let me know. Yeah.
Hi, great film.
Thank you.
I was quite interested in the camera angles you used. They were different, upside down and stuff like that. So just wanted, maybe you could talk about the camera angles.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat it so everybody can hear. There's so much craft that went into this story. Can you talk a little bit about the camera angles and maybe expound on the general cinematography of the film?
So I think, the world upside down, and I think this sense of, I wanted to, especially towards the front, make the film feel like you don't quite know what's coming, and so that the world can kind of shift on itself quite quickly. I think that's the same, the language of it all the way through is you don't expect necessarily what's about to happen next. It sort of moves in that way, and I wanted it to be like that because it's a bit like life, isn't it? And I work with a cinematographer called Susie Lavelle, and some of it was we saw it on the day, and it works. And so there was this moment, where at the very beginning when she's eating the crisps, and there's a shiny table. I actually was going to shoot through it, but then we saw the reflection, we're go with that. So when she stood up, for me, it was just so satisfying. So we kept it. It's kind of those happy accidents that happen. I wanted, so the early part of the film is quite contained. It's a bit fishbowl-y. We shoot a lot through glass, and the outside world is very present, but it's not right there. And then as she kind of gets more comfortable in the world, we kind of open out and see the world a lot more, and her place in it. We kind of had this resonating thing as it becomes Little People, Big World. And at first that's really daunting, and then by the end that's kind of beautiful,
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
I was curious if you could talk a little bit about the scene where she goes swimming kind of in the third act, as well as the symbols of water and how you wanted it
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the scene where she goes swimming in the third act and also the symbolism of water throughout the film?
So it's very present. It's the book was about a flood, but for me as well, there was this sort of sense of when you're giving birth or having a baby, you sort of are consumed. The world around you is kind of tight and close, and I've kind of wanted to depict that. I felt like when she goes swimming, that moment is a kind of real shift point. It's when she's sort of acknowledging properly what's happened and making the decision to move off. And I just, it's a common theme, this idea of a baptism. It's like a real shift point. Okay, I'm going to change. I'm going to actually kind of change the way my world is going now. So I think that's probably the answer. We could go on about this for a lot of time with a lot of weird metaphors about water, but I actually, one thing that I set out to do, and I don't know if it's there in some ways still, which was this sort of changing texture of water. So on her way back, it's properly free flowing, and you've got the creeping, but so it kind of goes from just a kind of creeping and a crashing and a taking over and a kind of filling up of the bath as well. It's sort of like taking over, and then it's crashing and it's bigger when we come to the waterfall. And that was something that, I really wanted to have, that it could be it's violent, but it's beautiful, and it's integral to the whole kind of feeling of nature and her in the world. Probably should stop talking.
It's a great question, because one of the
thank
scenes that had such a big impact was at the very beginning when she's in labor and the water's coming into the house, and then it kind of morphs into that scene where she's coming back up and through the hospital. And it did feel very violent and quite scary to watch, too, as well. Yes, over there.
Congratulations, I love the movie.
Thank you.
Powerful opening scene to the very emotional end scene. I love the end cap. One thing that stood out to me was it is about rain and the physical aspect of the rain, its consequences. But to me, it felt like as if what really made her drown was the absence of her partner. And I would love for you to elaborate. Did I misunderstood it, or was that something that you wanted to convey as a message?
Sorry, you need to.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to try to paraphrase. So you're talking about the rain and what really made her drown, the absence of her partner.
The true home. Yeah. To me, I understood he was her true home, and not necessarily physical.
I think I wouldn't want to kind of simplify it exactly like that in my mind. I think it's again about honoring the connection they had, and I think there's a break in it. One of the things that I really loved about the film is that you discover more about women as the film develops. It doesn't give you who she is straight away. You kind of actually find out nearer the end. And one of those things is that the relationship and the way they started, he had been a hero. He had been that person who was able to guide her through a really traumatic period in her life. And that actually was something that Jodie brilliantly carried quietly throughout the whole of the film, even though you wouldn't know until later. And I think, again, it was her kind of recognizing that, reminding herself almost of that period of grief. And there is a connection there, and I think that she wanted to kind of have catharsis in some way about him by the end. Yeah.
Did you have a question over there?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm.
And my instinct, I do this work, I do suicide debriefing, so I also work at events where somebody feels triggered. It's important to have somebody there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm a peer support, hopefully. I also work in peer support,
Thank,
other victims. So if there was anybody that was triggered by that scene with regards to suicide,
thank you. We do have active listeners,
one of the people who died of suicide this year.
but we'll take that into account for the
Yeah.
next screening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the question is, did Benedict Cumberbatch also produce the film?
Yeah, his company, Sunny March, did produce the film, yeah.
I have a question about the ending of the film. Was there a different ending from when Jodie's at the house and somebody walks through the door? Did you think about ending the film in a different way?
Yeah, I questioned it. I did. For me, it was also about we were trying to find a way to make the film feel more universal. And so for me, it was quite important to have the baby at the end. But yeah, we did think about it, that, you know, that maybe, but the thing is that the book always, she found that was just integral to the story in some ways. But we did think about it, but it felt true to be like this, and it felt right in the end, you know, it felt really right.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Thank you.
I read the book, and in Megan's writing style, I know that it feels very much like you're telling friends. It feels like you're dozing off and you keep waking up in a dream. It's very like you go down each line. So I'm wondering, did you have the vision for kind of like you don't know what's coming next as you're reading the book, or did it kind of gel this vision for the entire film and its style? Did it gel with Alice's writing of the screenplay as well as Megan's writing of the book? Or how did you find the vision?
So in the novella, the writing is like you keep drifting off and then waking up into a different dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. It's not very linear, it's impressionist, and so did that jive with the screenplay and then your vision of the film?
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to retain the poetry and the way in which she, navigated time, that you don't quite know what the time is, and you're kind of moving through, and you're being kind of washed through, going back to the water thing again, I'm going to keep doing it, kind of washed through, you know, flowing and kind of on the stream of this journey. And that is true to Megan's writing as well. But Alice also, I mean, she is quite formally kind of, we don't walk through doors. We kind of made that decision. We don't go through doors. So that kind of means there's a kind of lack of, you know, there's a kind of, you don't go from one place to another. You're in it, and then you're out of it, and you're in something else. And only occasionally we go through windows, and we go through, you know, when we're finding people again. But, we were trying to be as quite kind of, you know, we wanted to make sure that we didn't kind of expand the world too heavily, because I think we felt that if we would do that, we would lose so much of what made it's very particular, like the novel. Yeah.
Great question. It's a beautifully characterized and realized film, so thank you so much for sharing it with us, and thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.